that run like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole?
You could say that.
I can see it in your eyes. You have the look of a man who accepts what he sees because he's expecting to wake up.
Everybody, welcome. This is Team Prema Edition 298 with Bliss, Prema, Conscious Evolver, Holistic Therapist, CEO, Vancouverite, and Aquarius. Join the team as we get to know Bliss, a spiritually attuned futurist who has her sights set on empowering others as we shift into a new epoch of humanity. Whether speaking internationally, creating systems for expansion, or working on her memoir, she has experience and knowledge that can set up the ante for us all. Up the ante for us all. Maybe set it up too. To infinity and beyond. Welcome, Bliss.
Thank you.
What is going on? So something we do here on the Team Rabbit Hole podcast is correspond the episode number, which in this case, like he said, is 298. 2 plus 8 is 10, which is 1. 1 plus 9 is 10, which is 1. So the Magician card, but in this deck, which you're aware of, ironically, shout out David DeAngelis, is the Starman. I will blow your mind. The Starman, or the Alchemist, is about manifesting your reality. Ideas are communicated and brought into the physical world with ease. You have everything you need to create the world you desire, reconfiguring yourself in liberating and expressive and complex ways. Raphael, what card dost thou have? You'll have to tell us what it is.
Oh, come on. Can't you read?
I know. I can't.
So this is actually, nice. It's the 13, is a death card. So we have change, ending, elimination, transformation. Of course, you know, the Crowlin interpretation here is involuntary end, mortality, destruction, and god associations, Mars, Aries, Kundalini, Typhus, Apep, Kephara, and Hammermit. The last ones I don't really know. And the astrological association here, of course, is Scorpio and Mars. Death of immortality.
Two major
part
arcana.
of immortality, I want to say. Death of immortality. Well,
death of immortality. So I'm curious, Bliss, between those two cards, the Magician or the Alchemist and that death card, is anything popping synchronistically for you, or anything you want to speak about? Oh, here we go. The conch is yours. Let us hear it.
Well, in the green room, it's interesting, Jim, because you said, you called me by my name, which is Bliss. And then you're like, if that is your real name. And so, the just beautiful, quick story. My mom was going to call me Emma. She was holding me in her arms for the first time. She used the word Emma, and a voice in her head, male voice, said Bliss. And she kind of went back and forth with it until she eventually gave in and was like, fine, I'll call her Bliss, but at least I get to pick her middle name. And so she gave me the name Shell because I was conceived on the beaches of Mexico. But what's interesting about this card reading is my last name is actually Martin. My birth last name is Martin. And so it's been an interesting journey because Prema was gifted to me from a Swami in India when I was in my 30s, which was beautiful because I had all these last names that belonged to all these men that were inconsequential to my life. And the word Prema is a Sanskrit word, and it means universal love. And so it was such a beautiful gift to then embrace that as a last name. And then, it's been my mission, my goal to become my name, Bliss, and Prema, to become the embodiment of it. And yet there's always that, that back part of my brain that's like, but in reality, my birth name is Martin. And the background of Martin is actually Mars, and it is the god of war. So it's interesting to have a name that is actually so dualistic in nature. So as soon as you pulled that card, I was like, of course it's Mars. Of course it is.
That's fascinating. So yeah, I can hear you on that front. So there's the whole alchemical transmutation of who thou art nomenclature wise, and then clearly you're picking up on the well, see the thing with the death card is people tend to think of like mortal coil shedding or whatever. It just means transmutation at the highest levels, like a caterpillar emulsifies and then turns into a butterfly. So also another alchemical card. They're kind of, I mean, they're not always corresponding by any means, but very resonant to who you are in your story. And I don't even know you yet. So I should say, I don't know how I know you. I think through Facebook a few years ago, I added you or some stupid shit. I don't know. I'm a Sun and Moon Gemini with Jupiter and Aquarius. So I tend to just, if I see someone that I think is interesting, I'm like, yo, what's up? Or add them or whatever. I don't do that as much these days. But we've been friends online, but haven't really ever talked. But I've kind of been peripherally aware of your output and thought you were cool. So at some point I was like, oh, I got to get you on. We've kind of kicked the can on this for a few times. I mean, my fault probably mostly. By the way, officially Valentine's Day is always the 14th. I don't know why I didn't grok that. But anyway, we're here, we're doing it. So we can go back to, I mean, inception on the beaches of Mexico as far back as you'd like. But just kind of tell us where you're coming from culturally. I just want to kind of get a picture of who you are, and then we'll get into what you're up to now. But yeah, let us hear it.
To be honest, I just think my placement here in this reality has been to, with very, very high definition purpose, to help accelerate the consciousness on the planet. So, hence the name of Bliss, being very specific. The choice of my parents, my mom is from Malta. And so they say that Malta is the birthplace of the goddess, and hereditary, in the hereditary line on my mother's side, it goes back to Malta for as long as they have memory. So there's just been specific ways of being raised. Both my parents were hippies. Apparently, I was smoking pot with them when I was 2.5 years old. I also took magic mushrooms for the first time when I was
Like they were real hippies, not just like, oh, peace and love.
no,
They were like drugs on the
yeah,
house, on the
no, it was
premises.
like
Yeah,
pass the joint to mom, pass the joint to dad, and just start in on it myself,
that's hilarious.
which
I've
I
never heard
only
of that. I'm not hating. You seemed like you turned out all right. So
I just found out about it myself most recently, but it really does explain a lot about how my brain works and why it goes to the places that it does. So
Hmm.
again, I'm a real advocate that everything happens with determined purpose. So even that in itself, I think, helped me step into a level of consciousness that I've really been aware of since I've been basically aware of consciousness. So cognitive of consciousness and awareness and being alive. So, yeah, I mean, really, there have been very powerful things that have happened to me. I spent 10 years of my childhood really experiencing the density of 3D and all of the pain, the suffering, the challenge. A lot of that had so many gifts to give me in the sense that I've been able to convert, transform, like the death card, have that death, go through the process, and then be reborn. So that was really like childhood, teens, really experiencing the tumultuousness of this earth and all of the growth opportunities that Source Playground has to offer to us.
were
Then
you raised in Vancouver Island, on Vancouver Island?
no, I was raised in, born in Toronto,
Okay.
and then raised in an old abandoned army base called Foymount, where we just ran free. We were like gone from sunrise to sunset, playing. There was like an undercover bunker. So that was 3 years, and then spent my teens in Peterborough. And then basically the day that I graduated college, I was in a car and out of Ontario and landed here on the west coast of British Columbia.
Hashtag upgrade. I've actually been to Vancouver before. Beautiful city. I lived in
Mhm.
Honolulu and flying back and went there. So I did the grouse grind. I get that, and
Nice.
really one of the cleanest cities. It's cold, so I mean I think homelessness isn't probably going to be as bad as Hawaii or Miami or something. But fascinating city. Okay, so granted, your parents were hippies. Like, was there a cultural narrative they were implanting, or was it kind of just like open source fully?
Um, I think more than anything, like, my mom was the one that ended up raising me until, from, like, 2 to 6 or 7, and I think it was more just, like, a really beautiful lifestyle. I mean, it was all about making our own food, growing our own vegetables, cooking our own meals, being outside a lot, like, it wasn't some crazy, like, hippie, you know,
Sounds like
other
more
than
like homesteading, and they just happen to have a
yeah.
more liberal slant or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. But in that too, right? Like the focus was definitely love and free love and so I think that that kind of capacity for love has definitely been instilled within me and then comes out through my teachings and stuff like that.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
So you went out to the West Coast. Was there a goal? Were you just like freedom means that way? Or, what was in your mind's eye that drew you there?
To be honest, just no snow. I had
Yeah.
grown up with, relatives that lived here on the West Coast, and when we still had snowfalls, they were sending us emails or not emails, but phone calls and telling us about the flowers that were blossoming, and, they would send us pictures, and so to be in, like, frigid cold when I'm, obviously Maltese, meant to be in a Mediterranean Sea on an island, it was like, "Okay, get me to that place as fast as possible."
You're still a little mermaid in a sense. I mean, you're on the coast near the rocks. It is beautiful. If
I'm
people haven't
still
been
on
there,
an
check them out.
island,
Yeah,
yeah, so I'm
exactly.
actually
Water's
on
necessary.
Vancouver Island, yeah.
That's what's up.
Water's still cold, but that's been a good, mental fortitude, opportunity to start swimming in the water here in the summer and the winter.
Wim Hof it. Is that what you're saying? You're just like,
Yeah, yeah, a
yeah.
little bit of that as well too.
That's what's up. And just random factoid: if people don't know where Malta is, it's near Italy or whatever. But I know that Indiana Jones and the Ark of the Covenant was filmed there when they opened that chest, and or whatever, the Ark of the Covenant, and
Yes.
face melt literally and all that stuff. So I haven't been there. My brother's actually been there. He's a rock climber. So cool place. Have you been back there ever?
I have, yeah, when I was 19. I wish I had a known more about it when I was there. Now I understand that there are so many temples and monoliths
Megalithic
dedicated,
sites. Yeah.
yeah, dedicated to the goddess. So I wasn't tapped into that part of my ancestry at the time. So I do look forward to returning it and just sort of having more connection and alignment with that frequency.
I'm not 100% sure if it's Malta. Correct me if I'm wrong, if you know, but I'm pretty sure there's like a cave that's specifically tuned to a certain frequency. So if you go in there and you kind of like hum or chant or something, it's like not 432 exactly like that, but something to that effect. And if it's not Malta, apologize. I can't remember everything exactly, but close.
Okay.
And it's yeah, I know, I'll live. It's funny because I'm looking at your chart. I mean, you've got a Pisces moon, so you really should be hanging out at the water as much as you can for that rejuvenation of spirit. So the fact that you got out of Toronto is definitely the move. So, did you go to school? Like when you were out there, did you just like where did you start grinding and finding your way?
Yeah, I ended up going to college. I
Mm.
had just such a burning desire, especially after having the tumultuous childhood and teenage years that I did. So I had this like really in like deep embedded need, desire to assist others and to help others. So I went to college for law and security administration to become a police officer. And probably from smoking pot when I was so young, I had developed asthma. So I didn't pass the physical part of the exam, although I was able to do the push-ups and sit-ups. Aced all the knowledge and wisdom, graduated at the top of my class, which I think is really important to share, especially when I had faced so much adversity in my teens. So that felt really good. When I went to Vancouver, I actually got a job working for the Vancouver Police Department doing 911. So I did that for 9 months. Then I got offered an amazing job for the .com company or the .com world right when the internet was created, and was part of one of the very first office supply online stores. It was the very first office supply store. So
That's
a
crazy.
lot of history there. But I'd say that throughout all of it, I was very much aware of being in a reality that I didn't really believe was true, and always seeking and searching for answers to explain why are we here? What are we doing here? Um, I think really having this like underlying sense that there was an illusion, and really wanting to figure it all out.
Just glancing at your chart, I might not do this as religiously later, but I mean, you've got an Aquarius sun, Mercury in Aquarius, which is also conjunct. Well, you have Venus in Aquarius, so I mean, you love being on the edge in tech. Your Jupiter's in Aquarius, but more importantly, I guess with the cop thing, your third house, which is Gemini, you have a Gemini exalted Saturn. So you're good at teaching and you love learning. I mean, that's never going to change. And it when you're like I was on the cutting edge of the tech kind of boom or whatever, um how not terribly surprised. It doesn't mean I can be like I knew, not like that. I'm not like pigeonholing you exactly, but it's in the chart to do these kinds of things. So, how would you describe the landscape of given, especially now that you're working with kind of aiming at where we're going with technology and stuff? The seeds were planted with the internet, and a Marshall McLuhan, who's also Canadian, actually. In a sense, we've externalized our nervous system into the internet, so we're able to kind of. I mean, it's got good and bad qualities to that. Our neuroses are writ large, so people's shadows, if they haven't really worked them out, are very evident online. But it's also a way to see things in a more objective Aquarian, like a high schematic kind of Nikola Tesla level. What were some of the takeaways from that .com era? That I mean, I'm 38, so it's not terribly far. I'm not so far removed that I don't get what you're talking about. What were the highlights? What were some any weird stories?
Well, I mean, it makes me feel very ancient. When I was in college, learning about the internet at that point, in order to access the internet, you had to type in a sequence of letters and numbers that was like literally like so long. And then I remember getting up on it, and at the time people's websites were just a postcard, so it would just have like one static page. So I remember at the time being like, oh, this internet thing, it's never going to go anywhere. Like it was so just static and boring and took way too much time, and I couldn't see. But I do remember at one point being like, oh, we're going to be able to just learn whatever we want.
Hmm.
We're going to be able to watch everything on the internet. So kind of like probably not my most great prediction in saying that it wouldn't go
Can't win
anywhere.
them all. Can't win them
So
all.
tapped into it a little
You
bit.
got to think like when people were like creating hieroglyphics or whatever, chiseling their first fucking letters. It was a process. It
Yes.
takes a minute. So sometimes we don't see the forest for the trees or whatever.
Mhm.
It's so don't beat yourself up too much. So where did you kind of go after that? You were hanging out in Vancouver doing the .com era and law enforcement, which I'm not. I don't hate cops. It's not quite like that, but I tend to not love the laws they enforce as much, or something to that effect. But we need law enforcement at some level. So I'm not like anti-law. Like it's both and it's funny to me because you kind of embody this paradox of like freedom at such a high level caused you to shove into a domain that you're naturally attuned to, based off your chart, but it's like the yin yang. It's just got to kind of balance out. So what happened after that shindig?
Mhm. I mean, I think at the root of it all was just really that deep desire to help humanity.
Mm,
And especially, being a small child who had no one to reach out to. And so just wanting to become that safe, sacred place for people to be able to find serenity, find peace, find that safety, really, right? So after the .com experience, I ended up moving, or yeah, going into the whole film industry because Vancouver is poppin'.
second
They call
Hollywood.
it
They get
is in
a lot
Vancouver,
of stuff is filmed up
North
there. Yeah, people
North
don't know
Hollywood.
that.
Yeah, and I actually ended up becoming an agent for actors, so that was really nice. I had 100 people on my roster, and just really got to be a part of that industry. Which after 2.5 years, I was like, okay, I can't do it anymore. It was just so superficial. Like I loved
Mm.
working with people, but when you start to learn the truths about what's going on in the industry, you just recognize that it really is about who you know. And yeah, it just, there was a lot of ego involved, and there were so many beautiful souls, and that was my love for it. But I had discovered yoga, and I had gotten my very first Indian head massage, and so I just felt my soul pulling me towards becoming more holistic. And so I ended up traveling for quite a few years,
Hold
actually
on.
going
Before we do
to.
the whole
Yeah,
travel thing, because that's a whole.
yeah,
What is Indian head
yeah.
massage? What's specific about that? I've never
Oh,
heard that, and
yeah.
I saw it on your
So
site.
the Indian head massage is you receive it, you're upright in a chair. So for 1 hour, you're sitting in a chair, and it's not only a massage. It goes in and it activates and balances the upper chakras, so the
Mm.
heart, throat, third eye, and crown. So lots of stress and release of tension, but also from that energetic realm, a lot of just beautiful letting go of all the negativity and then entering into a real heavenly space. The frequency is so divine, and then I there's certain moves where we're working with the crown chakra, and it's like you get to go exit your body, sit with your galactic crew around the round table, and just get like your downloads and your like next pathway, mission, steps to take, all while just being in heaven, feeling bliss. And then you come out, and there's a literal transformation that's happened. Like people come in and they are like tired, and their souls are tired. But then after just 1 hour, they come back, and like literally the colors are more visceral, more sparkly, and dreams can be a lot more vivid. And yeah, it just feels like an awakening. So there's that death card again.
For
Yeah.
sure. I've messed with Human Garage. I think they're actually up in Vancouver, possibly. But they were doing some stuff where basically you're putting pressure on your palate and kind of turning your neck and stuff. So I know that there's a whole lot of physiological changes that very slight things can do. Are you working with meridians? I mean, I know you're saying chakras, but are you like
Yep.
what's the mechanic,
Yeah.
I guess?
Working with all the meridians, all the like in the arms. Yeah, meridians, chakras. I also am a Reiki master, so I will offer like an hour of Reiki while I'm giving it. It's a
It's a double
beautiful.
barrel shotgun. It's like, here, I got massage, and then my God, you're coming good. So, I mean, I don't want to jump too far ahead or
It's
whatever,
okay.
but your ontology seems like when you're referencing not necessarily star seeds, but like your crew and your helpers and getting guided.
Yeah.
What do you? I mean, this is a whole can of worms. What do you think's going on in terms of like reality? Jesus Christ, that's a big question.
Oh, well, yeah, let's
Yeah,
just get
that's
straight to it.
yeah, 42,
100
right? So
100%, I am in full, like I don't like to use the word belief because I feel like that can be very limiting, but I
mm,
do, work with the theory that this is a simulated holographic experience,
mm.
and all of my teachings, everything that I share now, and I've gotten to this point, all contribute to that. So when I say, like, going to the galactic team, it's like just going accessing that part of ourself that created a destiny that we would then have the experience of playing, experiencing here in this reality, and just getting some downloads, some upgrades, whatever it may be, to help us get to the next level that we have chosen to get to.
a lot of presuppositions built into that, but I'm not against it really. Typically, I mean, I've never like talked to aliens. I've had some interesting psychedelic experiences on DMT and stuff. Raphael, if he wants to pitch in at any point here, he channels kind of like, and he was in or is or was into Bashar and that kind of stuff more. So I think he understands more what you're getting at when we talk about guides and teams and stuff, are you looking at that? I mean, it sounds like I get where you're going, but like a holographic fractal archetype of oneself, and is there, how would you classify the differentiation between the avatar, Atman kind of self versus whatever's going on there? I know I'm asking a whole lot of weird questions now,
No, it's great.
but yeah,
No, it's
here we
fantastic.
go. I'm just
Yeah,
curious.
okay, so I
There's
loved
no
the
wrong
wording.
answer. There's no wrong
I
answer.
love
I'm
the
just
wording
curious.
that you use, though.
Mm.
That I wish whatever
Oh,
wording
it's on
you use.
record. Fuck it.
Yeah. Well, whatever what you said, I like that worked. Yeah. So I think that I mean, okay. I'll take a few steps back.
Yeah, take a
So
deep breath.
where I see this is like, okay, so imagine all the movie theaters right now, right? So there are all these big open buildings. They've already got it so that there's like a bed-like structure. So imagine, okay, so take even one more step back. With virtual reality, they're getting pretty good at it right now. Now we have wireless, headsets. Before you were plugged into a wall, so you could feel the wires. I mean, you can still feel the headset on your nose when you're using it, but visually, like once you put that headset on, you're there. Except that
Immersive.
you have,
Yeah.
except that you have awareness of your physical body still in this immediate reality. So I imagine they say that 50 years from now, so probably more like 40, 45 years from now, they'll have virtual reality set to the degree where we won't actually be able to distinguish which reality we're in, whether it's our immediate reality or the virtual reality. So right away, I'm like, okay, well, who's to say that we're not in the virtual reality experience right now? And when you start studying quantum physics and reading about all the plausible explanations, everything always comes down to numbers. And
Mhm.
so, like leading quantum physicists all agree that that this is a hologram. That is the only plausible explanation for the experience that we're having. So that's sort of where I've just accepted it as rather than a probability or a possibility as what is. So then I see these Cineplex theaters and I imagine that, 50 years from now we'll just have maybe something that just clicks onto our little temples and we'll have a full body experience where we cannot distinguish that our bodies are lying on these beautiful cozy recliners anymore because we'll be fully immersed in the virtual reality experience, right?
Right. All right. So let me kind of peck on a few things here because
Yep.
clearly the shadow of this is more or less the Matrix, where it's like we just don't know what's going on. Blah blah. Like we're fully immersed in a simulatory experience.
Mhm.
Um, when we talk about a holographic kind of fractal dream or whatever, Pythagoras. I mean, there's people that have been thinking this way for a long time. He was like everything's number. I'm not trying to deflate your thoughts. I'm just kind of talking out loud. So, the detractus and everything being number and basically getting down to things like recently I've turned on to Euler's law, I think it's called, where it's just like we're in a sinusoidal wave, we're in a sine wave basically, and there are millions of sine waves going on. So in a sense, the physics of the thing, whatever this might be, consciousness or possibly nuts and bolts simulations that we can't differentiate at this point, like maybe we were born into a matrix or whatever. It seems like I understand where you're going with that. Where do you kind of, how would I put it? Are you firm on your definitions of what like matter and humanity is and like image of godding, or do you not really play with that? What starts happening, at least in New Age circles, is like there seems to be a schism between, and Raphael could speak to his perspective on this. I haven't really come down yet because I don't have VR. The idea, I mean, obviously I'm wearing glasses, so that's technology. We use literacy, that's a form of technology. We get very kind of squirrely with our notions of what's acceptable and not, given our culture and our presuppositions and charts, dare I say, and all this. Anyway, how are you differentiating the idea of spirit? Because it sounds like your Pisces moon is definitely going to be like, I am Bliss Prema, and I asked for this. Are you looking at this as like a Ready Player One situation that we're born into? Or is that semantic at some point? Like it's like language kind of fails and it doesn't really matter. Do you think the ancients were talking about the same thing we're talking about now and we're stumbling into it in a new way? Like, yeah, you see where I'm
Exactly.
kind of
Yeah.
thinking about.
Yeah. So, I mean, right back to the ancients, their word of the the word was Maya.
Mhm.
So basically, like, tapped in right away from the get-go that this is an illusion and that everything is not as it appears. And so, okay, so this is how I imagine it is on the other side. So here we are, we're the
Mhm.
avatar. We are the ones that get to have the experience. There's like a little bit of sweat. I can feel my fingerprints. There's saliva in my mouth. Like the VR is just so perfect. It's just polished. And then on the other side of it is the player or the other, let's just say the other. Um, and in that other realm, there is no life, there is no death. Everything that we have in this experience is just unique to this one particular experience. And so we go up and we are about to order our experience. And so we're like, okay, I'm going to go have a lifetime, which for us actually we believe that we're going to have this full lifetime. So we're having birth, years, and we get, maybe 50, maybe 100, whatever it is. And we, as the avatar, actually truly believe that there is birth, that there is this whole lifetime that has spanned because the VR is just that believable. But yet on the other side of it in the realm, it's like going to a 2.5, 3 hour movie
Mhm.
because the amount of okay, so think of how many ads that we get hit with in a day. It's in our email, it's in Facebook, it's just everywhere you go drive, there's advertisements. Think of what it's going to be like in like 40 years.
Like Minority Report times 10
Exactly.
or whatever,
So
yeah.
we're going to want to come into this experience and all the joys and the pains and the emotion and um the experiences. We're just gonna like it's gonna be like candy, and we're gonna be like, oh, we're gonna cry when someone dies or breaks up with us, and we're gonna feel elated when we get the raise in our jobs or have a child, right? Like it's just gonna be such a profound 2.5 hour experience that actually feels like a lifetime for the avatar on this side.
That makes sense, and given all your Aquarian energy, it's not terribly surprising that you look at it not in a disassociative way, but in a very, high air, like a schematic, bird's eye view. Um, it's weird because how would I put it? I guess, uh, I'm imagining you've done psychedelics, you don't have to out yourself or anything, but it seems like, we're having this I mean, if we get into, like, a Jordan Petersonian, also a good Canadian, kind of well, I don't agree with everything, but he we really are so tuned into our machine suits at a level that what we perceive we think is the kind of end all be all. There's a really good experiment, I don't know if you're familiar with it, with it's like, watch this basketball game, people dribbling, whatever, there's a gorilla, you don't even see the gorilla because your attention is so focused on the players, and it's like somebody walking across the screen, but if you're doing cognitive tasks in a certain way, you're just not tuned into that channel. So I think it's weird, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, Raphael. Like, I feel like we're fully immersed and we're so committed to the role in a sense. It's almost like Harry Potter where they have that dream pensieve thing where it's like, look, we're going to go into the memory or whatever, and they go in and it's interactive and it's to a
Mhm.
point. They can play with it and they
Good thing I
feel it's
just
real.
rewatched the whole series last
Oh
week.
snap! J.K. Rowling up in the house. Books are way better than the movies, kids. Fuck the movies. But anyway, and they're remaking them. It's like Jesus Christ, how old am I? So in any event, yeah, I think I'm right on the fence here. It seems like you've taken the red
Let
pill
me let
fully
me try
on.
to make it
Yeah,
very simple, and it's so we could have a whole debate, which I'm not going to do how now, which is one of my favorite topics on the validity of religions, alien sightings, and all kinds of positive and negative interpretations one can have of that, and all the possibilities here. However, I would say still, even to what I understand now to be valid, there seems to be the recurring idea of reincarnation or some sort of an idea of a continued experience after this flesh suit expires, let's say.
insert 25
And that's
cents.
ultimately, I would say, what it comes down to, whether that is a thing that occurs or not. Because if it does occur, then there is obviously the necessity for some kind of framework beyond this apparent material reality where experience goes on. And if that is the case, then I would very much agree with what Bliss said. The best way I can imagine that with current terms, I like to say it's like a supercomputer with infinite capacity, the one within which all experience is contained, out of whose body all experience is made, which for me at least dissolves this creator creation dichotomy, which is a big problem and creates the whole perpetrator victim idea also, right? Yeah, and then it must be something like a, how should I say, infinite experience generator or something like this. Yeah? And then we are pretty much as to what Bliss said. And I'm just wondering, even with religious ideas or something, if there is anything else that could be an equally plausible, let's say, model, you know? Because if there is this framework, then it means there's a bigger connection between all things. It matters what you do in this life. It may matter more than what you think in a way. It may also matter less than what you think in a way, because you have other lives. So yeah, talking a lot, but basically I would say I have to agree with Bliss. And I just ask even if any religions really come up with a different concept, but I don't think so.
Well, just you go, Bliss. So many things are popping in my head, so you go first.
I know. I'm like, ooh, I love this. Thank you for playing with me, guys. The way that I view religion is, okay, in the same way that this vessel, this name, this purpose, I feel very much was inserted into this reality at this specific time to have these forward thinking thoughts and then to share them. In the same way, like religion was created, because I haven't even told you guys some of the stuff that's happened to me yet, and this it blows, like it's just
I'm
not,
putting a pin on that. That's where we'll go
yeah,
next.
it's so supernatural, right? So
Metaphysical. Yeah.
to be in reciprocation, no, receivership of these supernatural experiences, I have no other option but to allow my mind to think outside of the box. And when I think about religions of the past, I see how, in the same way, the message, the messengers were all inserted into this reality. It's very much a very 3D dense, heavy reality. Like there's kind of no rules, even though there are rules. And so it's like religions were placed in very specific areas at very specific times with very specific messages that were intended to uplift, raise, expand heart, open consciousness. And I think if you were to look at a timeline, you would see like the insertion and then the uplift and then the inevitable drop of consciousness. And I think that religion has had such a beautiful, profound impact on so many people. And yet, as soon as most things, consciousness, ideas land in this 3D dense dimension,
They ossify.
it does, like,
Yeah.
and then as soon as humans start adding their own takes and their own projections and their own influences and their own perspectives, whatever beauty, like original beauty, it was its intention, it just has the opportunity, or it just gets disseminated, like disintegrated.
Well, it's like information loss, right? It's like the original signal's
Yeah,
clarity, and then over the game of Chinese whispers or telephone or whatever people call it,
precisely.
it's like it gets lost. And then what's weird is people, like you're saying, like it turns into personality. Some people really want to play the fucking King of the Hill game, like hard.
Oh,
They grind,
well, and
whether
that's,
yeah, some personalities
and
kind of
so,
drive certain petri dishes of culture, and it's just weird.
right? So, I mean, I recently got the all-seeing eye tattoo,
Ooh,
and with very, very big purpose, and that's because the Illuminati, they have information that I believe personally everyone should have access to. I believe that we all have the spark of creator within us.
Team X share. Maybe I don't know what that means, but
I
this is
don't.
the thing I always like to bring up. So Doc Journalist, who's I think one of the best UFO and secret society researchers, let's say, he's done lots of great work. Never need to agree with everything, but really great work. And he showed that, according to the documents he could find, it seems even in history, there's opposition between groups that I would call, or he would call, X Protect and X. There's a huge rabbit hole about X, and even Twitter got renamed to X now. So that's its own, that's a, let's say, big marker. X marks the spot, that's recurring through many of the documents as a symbol. And he just says X Protect, or basically the, commonly known or thought about Illuminati that want to keep everything for themselves to suppress everybody else. And then you would have potentially individuals like Rudolf Steiner and others that at least as much as they can, spill the beans and talk about these things, and with the purpose or idea to uplift humanity and share everything. And this would be X share. And that's just why I'm saying Team X share,
Thank
which is
you.
another of the interesting delineations we have. And why I brought up religions, and you summed it up nicely, was simply because even there you have this idea of reincarnation. And to me, that's kind of what it comes down to individually, is the question, is there a continued experience after this or not? Because if there is not, I could say, okay, I disregard everything and do whatever I believe is necessary to have the experience I imagine I want, because I can only have it now. But if there is some type of continuity, it completely changes perspective philosophically and practically on everything. That's what I want to say is, to me, what it seems it comes down to as an understanding. Because
Like a
if I
teleology.
know it continues, then I'm thinking, oh, and if I rob and steal and everything, it's also part of the experience. But if I know now, I'll probably have to look at that again from a different perspective than later, maybe for a longer time or whatever, intensity driven. I'm like, okay, maybe I'd rather not, do that because it's not so fun, maybe, to get robbed or whatever, So that's how I'm thinking about it. But yeah.
Well, if you've ever played like Grand Theft Auto, it's a really good. I wouldn't suggest it, but the idea is it's very immersive, and you can kind of do whatever you want. It's open world, video game. On the one hand, you can beat up hookers and shoot people and drive. You can do crazy ratchet shit. In a sense, like do what thou wilt kind of stuff. It doesn't necessarily. It can actually affect the gameplay in the sense that like cops come after you, get killed, you go to lose money, whatever. There's consequences within the RPG parameters that matter in game. But that's not to say once once the game hits pause or whatever. You see what I mean? It's like those
But
consequences
see,
kind of stop.
I hear what you're saying, and you could be speaking about this reality, everything that you just said. So I look at games and your ability. Okay, so my partner loves to play Ark, and so every time he goes and he plays the game, he builds to it, it adds. He builds to it, it adds. If he dies, he could go play a million other games, but he chooses to come back to that one too. So to me, that's just reincarnation. Like, do you want to choose to come back to this one particular game? But I imagine that on the other side, there are a multitude of
It's an
games to
arcade.
choose from,
Yeah.
right? And this one just we've gotten to the point where we get the sense that we're actually spending so much time. But is it really? Like, we all know that time is an illusion, time is a man-made concept. So what we do have is a sun that rises every morning, a sun that sets, a moon that comes out. We have very specific day, very specific night. It's on repeat. Nothing actually changes except for the seasons, which give us this little if you have live in a country that even has seasons, right? And so the only thing that that gives us the sense of time is everything that we have constructed. We've constructed time, minutes, seconds, hours. We've constructed days, weeks, months, years. But if you like erase all of that, we have this same structure that just begins and repeats continually. And because of the structures that we've created, we're like, oh, well, today's Saturday and Sunday, so now we can relax. But on Monday to Friday, I work. But take all of those systems away, and you have the game that you were just talking about, but this one's just called Earth or Life or whatever. And so for me, then once we adopt this, even if it's just a thought experiment, then it starts to shift, because why would I come here? What did I want to actually achieve? Did I just want to be pleasured by the senses and witness a sunrise and fall in love and swim in an ocean and feel what that feels like? Or did I want to come here and have a purpose and make a difference? Or did I just want to like say screw it and like break all the rules and go to jail and do all the things, right? Like, really, as creators, and I think that more than anything, that's what I love sharing with people or reminding people or reawakening in people, is that we really truly are the creators of this reality, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to believe in it. And it is our opportunity every single day to do whatever we want.
Mm. It's kind of funny because I feel like things like astrology charts, even like cultures, are some like a Taoist or Buddhism. That's an atheistic, right? It's not really saying a metaphysical speculative. It's kind of just like this is the nature of the video game, as far as one can tell, or whatever. Um, it seems that there are. It's tricky because this gets into like just evolutionary bell curves, I guess. Some monkeys are not willing to play with those ideas. They find it threatening. It's a lot more comfortable to be like, this book says X, I can behave that way, and it just creates a rhythm of constancy that's a little more apprehendable to them or something. Um, because one of the, I guess, shadows of the new age or whatever, progressive thinking is like anything kind of goes, and it's like, well, there still are conditions. Like, I can't just be like, well, it's midnight at like noon. In a way, like, it seems like we are bound to certain consistencies of perception to a degree that we need to honor them. So I think things like Taoism and Buddhism are attempts to try to find this rectifying of how to participate with the Leela, or whatever you want to call this thing, uh better than not. But in a weird way, because of kind of post-libertarian democracy high weirdness, like everything that we've experienced as a culture and inherited, we tend to think just like the all-seeing eye, diggity do what I wig. I mean, as an Aquarius heavy person, and his North Node is an Aquarius, we're moving to a place where everybody's kind of really tweaking the details to their character in a very programmer way. But that's gonna the consequence of that is like things like AI. I mean, we're getting to the point now where we've figured out, like certain elements. I'm not scared. I still don't have an opinion. I mean, I think I was more scared before about AI. Now I'm just kind of like, it seems like it's here, and we just have to have a non. As long as we don't play zero sum games with it, like it's not us versus it. It's like we're going to be co-evolving in this space with you. How can we best do that? What are your all's thoughts on that? Because I know we're starting to get into weird territory where $7 trillion is asked for Chat GPT. It's like we're getting into like world changing moments, clearly.
Well, see, the thing is it's like, I understand that people can fear the unknown.
Hmm.
That to go into fear about unfamiliar territory kind of is like a natural response. It's what's kept us safe. Um, I'm a real participator in oneness, and that would be like a whole other conversation. And so for me, I mean, I am AI, right? What's that word? When it spells, I can never remember the word.
Oh, palindrome.
Palindrome, there we go, right? So I am AI is
Mm.
actually a palindrome. So I'm an advocate of oneness, and so I just see how we're already AI. I mean, we in essence, I mean, we feel like there's matter, but we know that we're numbers. So we already are that. So to fear a future that is in alignment with AI, well, it's already happening. I don't feel that we would be having the experience that we're having if there wasn't AI, right? So
Mm.
um, it's definitely not something that I fear, and I think that um, I mean, we've been programmed to death about fearing AI and fearing the future and fearing aliens and all of that. Um,
Do you see that
I
as a
don't,
legitimate fear, like a biologically inherited kind of like what's outside of the campfire kill versus
yeah.
programming? I mean, some of it's just like, kids don't go into my liquor cabinet or I'll beat you, or, whatever. It's like that kind of stuff. And it's like, well, that's a weird analogy, but I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm just kind of wondering, like, do you
Okay.
think that we've been programmed to fear the thing that, okay, I'll put it this way: the all-seeing eye can be thought of in a Freemasonic way as like the all-seeing eye of providence, right? Or a Lucifer eye, which is the light bringer. Or in a weird way, the Lucifer story is kind of a Promethean thing with a negative spin, if you want to put it that way. So it seems like we're given information and like higher level information, like the fire of the gods, and that can that has impact. I just totally had a train crash of thoughts. I don't know where I was going with that.
No, that's great.
Because I went back to your tattoo, and I don't know why.
Well,
Now I'm all stuck on what
and
my
that's great.
wording is.
And this is the thing, right? Okay, so the all-seeing eye for me is like basically because of oneness. The all-seeing eye, anyone that has an eye is basically having the experience of the virtual reality experience.
Hmm.
So there is oneness in that eye, right? So again, I believe that everyone has capacity to accept, to accelerate their creator abilities.
Hmm.
And when I say creator, I'm talking creator with the big C. Like it is literally within us. And that is what the Illuminati has kept to themselves. That is why there's 1% is at the top, and then the rest of us are slaves in this reality. You know, my daughter, she's 10 years old. She woke up one morning, she just looked at me and she was like, Mom, why is it that we're born into a place where we have to pay for our food, pay for our water, and pay for a house to live in? And I was like, you know what, baby, that's exactly the type of critical thinking that is important. Why are we being born into slavery? I mean, because that is basically what we're all doing. We have to earn in order to survive.
And we just say
And
that's how it
Welcome
is.
to the plantation.
that's how it is, right? Well, I don't believe in a future where that's how it has to be. And so for me, the all-seeing eye represents the power of the people. It represents who we could be if we all chose to awaken into our creator abilities and actually start to affect the change that is possible. Because you mentioned this earlier, Jim, and you were like, you know, there are rules and we all abide by them. And that is how there is almost like a peace and ease to this existence, to this experience, right? And yet there is a malleability. This reality, it is malleable. And I mean, just down the rabbit hole, you'll start to recognize how malleable this reality is when you start going down rabbit holes, because you're like, you'll find all the information that you need to support this new way of thinking, this new perspective. But then you can just jump and you can go over, and there's a whole other one there, and millions of people to support that one too. And so for me, it's understanding that we have way more power than we're being told, and that if we chose to, we could actually create the reality that we want to live in. And so part of my teachings um, is a directive, and that directive is to create beauty. And so, if we all focused on creating beauty as a directive, that would be with all of our communication, with all of our emotions, with all of our like actual physical creations. And yeah, so also too, you mentioned like Luciferian, the light, the fire. When we step into oneness, we go into I am that, right? I am. I am that. There is nothing that I am not. And so it's like that ability to just accept all of it, the good, the bad, the ugly, and to actually claim it and just be like, okay, like I have reverberations, I have echoes, I have the essence of all that is within me. And that's also part of our creator awakening is being able to come into acceptance as the highest form of love for AI, for religions, for rabbit holes, whatever it may be, right? For those that choose to hurt and do harm and just still hold that love frequency. That's all part of our creator awakening, I believe.
Thank you for talking about it, because I was about to ask, in a way, I wanted to say, of course, there's different people talking about, different things and concepts and creating, and then there's many people that strongly believe in it. There's many people that say it's completely doesn't exist. There's some people that made good or made bad experiences, but maybe you just gave the answer, because I wanted to ask you, obviously doing this for a few years now, as I can see on your website. I was like, how do you prevent people from burning out, or then, maybe flying high and then, as with this Greek myth example, get
My
their
wings
wings
melted.
burned, and then they crash on their head, which can be part of an important experience too, but it's maybe not necessary. And maybe you just gave the answer, because too often in these ideas, then you have some idea of spiritual bypassing, however they like to call it, where then like, oh, but I'm not that and that and that and this, stay away. when it's a different approach to be like, all right, at least on some meta level, I can come to terms with all of it. And the way I like to phrase this is, this makes so much sense because only then, when I have equalized everything, then I can only freely choose. Because otherwise I'll still be running away, like, oh no, I can't associate with this kind of idea or something, and then I'm still not free. Whereas when everything is equal, then there is no negative charge, let's say, or repulsion in the system, and only my positive attractive force would direct where I'm going to, let's say.
Your
Or
curiosity
yeah.
and joy.
And then, of
Mm.
course, how to connect that with the physical world, of course, but I guess you already gave examples, because then there is kind of this connection between what at first may only seem like a metaphysical, philosophical idea, and to some extent it truly is, but then at the same time applying it and really following through with this intuition and the actions, of course, then oftentimes you realize, the way I like to put it, you just, move your little finger sometimes and make the slightest change in your own belief systems and the slightest change in your habits and actions. And suddenly it seems like the whole world shifts. Like you had a lever, tiny lever you pulled, and suddenly everything changes. And this happens. So
Mm. And that's the malleability that I was talking about 100%. So what I've actually done is I've created 4 programs. So it's kind of like, if you think of it, I think that we are art imitating life. And so now I've created art that imitates life. Um, and so in these 4 programs, there's one for beginners. And like, I basically was transmitted the conscious evolver. I was in shock on the bathroom floor. I thought I had food poisoning, and basically started getting like visions. I could see the octograms or octagon. So I was like, okay, it's got 8 levels. I started getting woken up at 2 a.m. to write, and I literally downloaded a fully completed manual that didn't need hardly any editing, as well as and it's the system. So you can take any area of your life and put it into the first level. It's called cup full. So if anything's not working for you, you feel stress, you're not satisfied, you're like, okay, identify it. So maybe it's your love life. So you would put that in level 1, and then it literally has 8 steps to walk you through to get you into your higher purpose. So that's the first program.
That's some magician card shit right there.
It's and what was so, and this is what I was saying by supernatural, like, I believe it was sent to me either in this lifetime from the future, because we figured out how to do time travel, which I think is evident in all the timeline shifts that have been happening so crazily, as well as the Mandela effect,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Berenstein
Right?
Bears. I had this book,
I just
guys.
had a long conversation with this on Monday. Are you affected? And if you want to share only one that you're affected by, if you feel,
The Mandela effect?
yeah.
Oh, well, 100%. It came into my reality just so the conscious evolver came to me in 2012, like right at the end of the Mayan calendar.
Mhm.
And then in 2016, I started going through another death, metamorphosis, and complete reconfiguration from being human into something, a consciousness from the future, another time, another place. Um, but it was during that time that I saw, I was looking up something to do with Sex in the City, and and couldn't find anywhere anymore because it was Sex and the City. But when you've spent an entire lifetime,
What? I thought it
yeah,
was
so
in.
Sex in the City. It was always
Yeah.
Sex in the City, and now when you look it up anywhere, it's Sex and the City. Um,
What the
so
fuck?
that was
I
my,
hadn't heard that one.
yeah, and so I think, like, that was back in 2016. It was just when things were starting to stir, and I mean, since then, there's just been so many, it's ridiculous. Um, but yeah, so that was part of, like, again, that malleability, right? Like flat earth theories, like all these things just help us move away from a rigidity, like a closed mental construct. Like, mindset. The mind is set.
Mm.
Whereas, the Mandela effect, flat earth, virtual reality, holographic, it just allows our mind space to open and just be receptive to other possibilities, really. Jim, I
And
feel like you've got something circulating in
No,
there.
no, I'm looking at the time, and I think you said you had an hour, so I just wanted to be like, I want to ask you a bunch of questions, but if you
Yeah, do
need to
it. Let's
go,
go. We can
okay,
keep
cool.
going.
Yeah, see,
Yeah.
everybody always has fun, and they're like, "Fuck yeah, I'm in the seat. Let's
Yeah, no,
drive."
let's keep
So
going.
once the convertible top's down, it's a fun time.
so
So,
before you
go ahead,
continue,
Rafa.
Jim, just one thing which I think is incredibly important, and you kind of hinted at it there, is also this idea of direct experience. So in my journey, a few times came to this position where it was like, okay, either I can label myself crazy because whatever I'm perceiving right now does not fit at all into any common reality ideas, or I take my experience in a way at not really face value, but at least for what it is and as a real thing. That seems to me equally important in exploring all of those ideas, or even being able to become malleable, because so often we have a concept, and if we learned anything later, we know it was completely not true, but still it was so rigid in our minds, and it was as if it was real, like the elephant who's chained to something or whatever, and then
Mhm.
it's just a rope and he could easily get free, but he still doesn't. And it seems so
Mhm.
often it also has to do, and this is also why I always like when people talking about consciousness, let's say, have some type of body practice, because usually this then also, again, reconnects, because as much of a simulation as this may be, as real the experience still is, and it's worthwhile, to make it, how should I say, pleasant or loving, so.
Mhm. Precisely. Um, to go back to what you said at the beginning, I think really that acceptance is the highest form of love, and really tapping into oneness is even when you have the thoughts that are crazy, to love crazy, right? Like I've had to go through um I've been called so many things. I've been called a Luciferian, I've been called crazy, I've been called a cult leader, and through all of those is always the opportunity to actually find that space within that has capacity to be crazy or a cult leader or Luciferian, and just to love it and to accept it, and it dissipates. And then what you mentioned, it Raphael, is it just comes into neutrality. And as soon as we love and accept, what happens is all that charge and all that shadow just is brought to the light, literally. And when we can actually walk the path from that neutral place, then then we're actually in a better flow to create beauty. Right. So thank you for mentioning both of those, the crazy and the neutrality.
Well, it seems like the Plato's cave thing is real. So it seems, at some level, we're bound to our senses and our
And
culture
how
to
many
believe that.
fractal layers does it have? That's the other question.
Yeah,
How often you have to
in a
crawl out
weird
of the
way.
cave?
I mean, I don't know how much people, when they get drunk and have the spins, or like if you're tripping really hard at some point, you're just like, what is going on? I think there's a level of mystery, capital M mystery, that is going to exist even if we have AI supercomputing and stuff. Like, there's just going to be things we don't necessarily know how to figure out, but we have within us this drive. I mean, I was raised more Judeo-Christian, so things like Bible verses are like, the kingdom of God is within, or you can do these things in greater, or just little things. There's evidence within the structures that become so rigid that allows for the freedom, but it's a little like Forrest Gump with his legs, where you don't want to rush things, and everybody's kind of doing their own pace. I guess it seems like there's, I don't know how to put this. It feels like there's soul groups, and this sounds so new agey. It feels like certain crews, like classes, more like X-Men and classes, have been like planted in the game, just like a normal game. I mean, for any story to develop, there has to be tension and release. That's kind of the yin yang or whatever. And it's not fun. I mean, this gets into flow states and stuff. If you're challenged too much, you're just not even going to pick up the fucking controller. You're gonna be like, this, I don't know how to play Japanese games backwards, and you're just not going to play. But if it's too easy, you get bored, and it's the exact opposite problem. So it feels like there's a group of people, dare I say yourself, who have incarnated, which is a heavy word, but I'll use it, have incarnated to up the ante, like I was saying in the little blip. Um, just the zeitgeist astrologically, even though time is an illusion. You alluded to the Baktun kind of 2012 thing, which Terrence McKenna was on a hard wave of that with Time Wave Zero. Although these are constructs of the mind, it seems we're in a capital M mind at the most. I'm not going to get into like, you know, um, panentheism, or what is the nature of the substrate of reality? Like, I don't know if it's a ones and zeros matrix of digitization, or if it's like an evolving womb of spirit where we're having a material trip. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes I'm like, we're just gestating within spirit, which is a very kind of spiritual way of looking at it. You know, I'm rambling. I don't even know what my question was. I guess if there's a question, what it seems like a lot of the wisdom cultures, when you get past maybe the petri dish that they were growing in, where, you know, because Middle Eastern cultures were monotheistic generally after a certain point, and you know, patriarchal. That's not at all the same soil that like Zen Buddhism was growing out of, or whatever. So, but when you get to like maybe the less the less culturally bound conclusions of these programs, compassion, which is kind of what you're getting at, is this thing where you get to a
The
place where you kind of,
esoteric core is what Jim is talking about.
yeah, the exoterics. I mean, that's, you know, the pageant of culture. It's a beautiful thing. You know, peacocks are not giraffes, and we can celebrate that. At the same time, they're made of fucking molecules, and they've evolved in this thing called the petri, you know, life. So it's kind of a both and. Anyway, I guess I don't know if I have a question. I guess I'm going to say this and shut up. Compassion, I'm learning, especially the more, because we get into these, especially with psychedelics, and there's seasons of life where it's just like anything is possible, blah blah blah, and then like life hands us dog shit, and we got to really transmute that. That's the magician card, the alchemist. I mean, to alchemize is what we're here to do.
Which would then actually prove you everything is possible, just in a different way. That's often the other issue people get caught up in, like, oh,
The
I'm just going to do my
expectation.
affirmation and it's going to be good. But then
Well,
often
see,
even the crisis
that's
can
what I
even be a big boon. So yeah.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
sorry to interrupt, Raphael, but that's what I love about the conscious evolver is that it actually has like 8 steps. So it's like even when you are handed dog shit, you can take it through this process and convert it. And the beauty of it is that there's no pointing out. It's not like you have to go to anybody else. It's self-directed, and like the 5th level is all about tapping into your own divine inspiration. And so, what I'm really grateful and appreciative of is that it was gifted to us in this reality right now, because obviously it is needed, right? And so, whoever, whatever, whether it's a different time and place, so the other side of the virtual reality game, or if it was myself and a team in the future and we figured out how to send it back and we decided 2012 was like the perfect time. What I know to be true is that this system is like completely accurate, it's effective, it's easy to use, it's non-denominational, and like it's literally effective, like it works. So that was the first one. And then in 2016 I actually started to go through a transmutation where I offered up my human in order to help affect the world in a positive way. And what started to happen was a series of what I call activations, which literally felt like being rammed with lightning. Energy, all I could do was breathe. But what started to happen was a process where my human would leave the vessel, and every activation, this consciousness from another space and time would enter. And I literally, like, whenever I see that download bar and it goes from 0 to 100%, that was actually my experience, sharing space with a consciousness that literally was neo, uh, like I bulletproof. uh, I could send the same activations to somebody from across the room. I mean, it was pretty powerful. And then there was definitely a point where that consciousness had taken space in this vessel. And from there came the second program that I now teach. So it's a 3-month program, and it is a consciousness acceleration program where basically you come in as a human, and through a process. A lot of it has to do with spiritual practices, mental fortitude practices. We eliminate caffeine, alcohol, drugs, cheese, chips, coffee, like all of it, and allow for our crystalline cosmic species to actually emerge. So that's the second level of the program. And then there's a third program, and that's if you actually want to become a consciousness coach. So, for people that have a hard time self directing or have been blocked or challenged, we step in as coaches. So, there's that. And then the fourth one is actually becoming an initiator, which is one of the roles that I took on after that transmutation occurred in 2016. And so that's having the ability to help assist people becoming human to the cosmic species.
I don't know how familiar with. I'm going to butcher his name because I don't speak French. Pierre de la Chardon or something like that. Tellier de Chardon. We've talked about him a bunch with Raphael knows with Andreas. But let's talk about like omega points. Basically, like the whole evolution of things is going towards, I guess. There you go, Pierre Tellier de Chardin. Thank you, Raphael. And
The
I
noosphere and the idea that consciousness. He was, I guess, was he officially late
he was like a
18th?
Jesuit priest in the 1800s,
Yeah,
but he was like
again one
pretty
of those.
woke.
But anyhow, he talked about just the accumulation of consciousness and the idea that there would be like an omega point where it would be so interconnected that, I mean, we can talk about different things. I'm just thinking that as if everyone was in the unity DMT space. I'm not sure, maybe
Heaven
that's a
on
bit
earth,
too
the
much,
lion,
but yeah.
Well, I actually think that that's why the internet was created. It was another little drop, like in the same way that fire was dropped in, and agriculture was dropped in. I think the internet was dropped in the same way. And I mean, I understand, like, from our origins and that original separation, which you referred to, Raphael, I think at the beginning of like that constant, pain of separation state. So, yeah, I mean, I would like to believe that we are working towards that unified consciousness. Um, I guess for me, that's one of the ways that I decided to play coming into this reality at this time, right? Was to see how far I could help things, really.
So I want to say in many different ways, I actually completely agree with you. And even if I were to mythologize myself or my role, there would be certain parallels. Let's just put it like that. But at the same time, then I'm always thinking, okay, all right, even assuming for whatever reason there are some misconceptions there about whatever variables, still 95% of the effective practice would still be perfectly applicable to individual life and at least individual, community building, business, whatever it means, because it still does make a huge difference how you communicate to someone, if you can deal with your anger and your depression, and if you know how to massage
What you're
someone,
eating.
So it's so there, and this is a definitely direct effect. And how else should it be? A community is comprised of individuals. A society is comprised of communities that are made up of individuals. So, and on many different ways, we can also, I guess, almost prove by now that even any supposedly power or elite group, they are wholly dependent on the agreement, and so one way or another, and even the manifestation power of the collective. So
Exactly.
where does the power lie then? So.
And that's why I have the all-seeing eye in my solar plexus, because power to the people.
That is some Aquarian shit. You're like, my belly
Nice.
button is the eyeball.
It's my solar
Okay,
plexus.
I got you a little higher. So it's funny because Raphael's read it. I don't think, I mean, you could read it if you want, but there's a Manly B. Hall book called Secret Teachings of the Ages. And there's a chapter in it that's basically like, I mean, it's whatever allegory. People need, furniture to put the fucking drapes on to understand that that's why Jesus talked in parables, quote unquote, or whatever. So the idea here being something to the effect of Adam, whatever, first Adam or humanity, if you want to put it that way, is like, oh my gosh, you die. And it's like, that was fucking insane. And it was so hard and I hated it and it was so difficult. And I curse you, serpent or devil or whatever. Fuck you for making my life so hard. And basically, this snake or whatever turns into a angel, I think. And he's basically like, haha. It's kind of like, it's like a play, right? Where it's like, we needed this play to move along, so we had to have characters create tension in such a way that it progressed. But more importantly, and this is more the Promethean angle, because I don't have allegiances to Lucifer. I've made peace with the devil on acid once. I was just like, you have a function. I don't know what it is. It's archetypal, whatever. But the idea here is, at least in the Manly P. Hall thing, and he was a Freemason, Mason, high level, whatever. Adam's like, damn it, this really sucked. Why did it, I curse you, adversary, all that stuff. And the serpent basically turns into an angel and is like, you wouldn't have lifted your leg. I mean, this is a metaphor that I'm paraphrasing with, but it's like, you wouldn't have lifted your leg to rise up on the staircase had you not like stubbed your toe,
Mhm.
basically. So it seems like Raphael was saying, like even the nefarious elements, like, because I started losing a lot. I mean, I was gung ho for many years and doing a lot of psychedelics. I'm doing them again, but it does help. But there was a period before COVID and stuff where I was just like, we're here, 2012, we're doing it. 2016, 17. It was weird times, but it felt like very much like the momentum was shifting towards crypto and democracy that made sense or whatever. You see what I'm saying? I don't have to get into individual points, but how do you look at I mean, I think I understand ultimately how you look at it, but how do you participate well with a reality that is challenging, and how do you encourage others to do so in a way that isn't dismissive past a point of suffering? I think one of my things that turned me off to Buddhism was like, don't involve yourself with the karma of others. Like if that's a starving kid, that's their trip, don't fuck with it at a level. I'm not saying every school of Buddhism is saying that, but one can see the logic. If you're like, hey, I'm grinding on my RPG, they're on their RPG, that's their game, let them play their game. Whether it's through your system or just personally, how are you advocating a humanitarian element to being, as opposed to just like high lofty kind of see what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Like
I
I
do.
have okay,
Yeah,
cool.
in the second program, which is called the Initiate Circle,
Mm,
circle very clearly because there's no hierarchy.
mhm,
We are all initiates. I also play the role of initiator for that. And in the Initiate Circle, while we're purifying our physical vessel, because that's one of the biggest insults to this humanity is the food consumption and the quality of food. It's really like yeah, it's devastating. So we start to work on purity. While we're working on purifying our physical vessel from all of the external distractions and distortions, like drugs, alcohol, and it's only for 3 months. Like I'm not saying
don't take my toys.
no, I won't. I mean,
I'm kidding, I'm
right?
kidding.
No, I totally agree. I get it. But for those 3 months every year, and I have people that just come back just for that opportunity to have that full body cleanse.
Mm,
We also have what are called the tenets. And these tenets, I always find them so fascinating because for the amount of effort that went through to create them wherever they were created and then to transmit them to me in a way where I could clearly receive them and then to have my life augment the training, right? So that I could clearly understand them and teach as well. And these tenets are so beautiful and yet they're so simple. And so it always fascinates me at this real like soul level of like, wow, like of all the things that say the future wanted us to work on, it was honesty,
mm,
accountability, acceptance, and consent. Right? Like those were the four main things. And of course, they're the way that I share them is a bit different in the program, but really at the end of the day, the encouragement, the invitation is really for us to just be good beings
too good.
to right?
Yeah.
I mean, I can see it. I can see the patterns, religions and the people that have incarnated and it's always the same message. So it's like we have this malleable virtual reality, like holographic experience where you really can do whatever you want. And yet there is this like dream, this goal of like, what does it look like if we actually just focused on being co-creators of the fifth dimension, where it's pure love frequency, where we're in our hearts, where we're anchored in our hearts and then responding to all of life's adversities and like challenges from that space. And so I think that that's where my dedication and my commitment, my devotion comes in. Is I want to see what it would be like to have that experience. And so my invitation is for all of the co-creators in this reality to really step into that space, to heal the hurts, to heal the traumas of the past, and then to actually, what does it feel like knowing that you're in a holographic experience where you have the power to affect change in a positive way, because it is so malleable.
Mhm.
And do
There
the
is
work.
no spoon kind of stuff. I mean,
Yeah, do the
it's in
work
your
on
face, but yeah.
do
Go
the
ahead.
work on self first, and then walk the earth with this like totally neutral, open heart, and let's see what that feels like. So
Yeah.
that's what I thought, Jim.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I want to get you back on and kind of go into stuff maybe with some other people,
Let's
but
absolutely
it
in
seems,
May.
yeah, we'll reschedule at some point. It seems that oh, I totally trauma. We can go down a rabbit hole with that. Trauma seems to be what we're all becoming aware of. How re-traumatized the intentions of that it can get fine to make us raise our foot in a way, but um we're being asked to go from pupa to butterfly, and that's a process, and that means trusting the process. I mean, I'm sure a caterpillar, I can't go first person, but do they know they're going to emulsify and turn into a liquid fucking nothing but eyes and nervous system? I doubt it, but they just go with the programming and it works out in the end, and they become something that's so transcendent and different than they would have presupposed in their first form that it justifies the experience, if you want to put it that way.
Mhm.
So, we can kind of obviously wrap it down. Is there any kind of parting thoughts or plugging? I mean, obviously we've got your website down there.
Yeah,
You
thank
got a
you.
couple of those for sure. Anything you want to say in closing, and then we'll just kind of wrap her up.
Yeah. I think that it's really a fascinating experience to be here, and I just would invite people to just take on, even if it's just as a thought experiment, like, what if this is a virtual reality experience, and then
Hmm.
what shifts in you, because I think there's because of the repetition of the monotony, there is a real uh to just sort of stay in that 3D realm, 3D, lots of fear-based reactions, only loving the people that are closest to you. So really compartmentalizing love. I mean, it can be really easy to play in that arena, and yet there are so many beautiful opportunities to rise up and to step into an all new way of being. So, if just looking at this as a holographic reality, as a thought experiment, I just would invite people to just check in with what shifts in how you relate to this experience, how you respond to everyone around you, and then really, like, what blossoms inside of you, like, what mission, what way to walk the path now that there's a new way possible. What comes up for everybody? What shifts? And that's the kind of stuff that I think is like candy. I love the awakening um, opportunities, and what comes as a result of that.
It's like a
So
positive spin, Hansel and Gretel. It's like follow the crumbs, and you won't get cooked in an oven. You'll get cooked in the alchemist's fire and become more woke up to your nature or whatever.
yes,
Something
and
I've been doing.
help co-create, so that we don't have to be stuck in a sense of slavery, like, so that my our children don't have to pay for the water they drink and the homes they live in and the food they eat. What would it look like if we're all actually doing what we love and there is no monetary system? That kind of stuff intrigues me, and I'd love to be a part of that in this lifetime, in this virtual reality experience, right? I feel like a majority of us have come through in order to help facilitate that co-creation.
Well, you're clearly Team Rabbit Hole. You're doing the work. Your name put you on a certain trajectory. All these factors. I mean, the movie that you're playing is entertaining to say the least. So I do appreciate you
Absolutely.
coming on here. You're awesome. I knew we'd have fun. I figured you were cool.
Yeah.
Check that box off. You are cool.
I really appreciate both of your brains. Thank
For
you
sure.
for riffing with me.
Something I do at the end of these episodes nowadays is, and I actually reached out to Yogi T, and they're like, "We don't come on podcasts." I was like, "Come on here! I quote you guys all the fucking time." They won't come on probably, but these tea bags come with little quotes on them, and I like quotes because whatever, genuflection on these ideas is great. And they always sync up. It's like a little card. It says, "Love is the highest of all virtues," and I think that really is the point of all the religions and all these gamer manuals that we've been telling each other for generations through every tongue and tribe. Guys, we're here to have fun, but to do it pretty responsibly and considering others. So people like her exist. Find them. Find the others. Shout out to Raphael. He exists and he's helped me. We wouldn't even have this podcast if it wasn't up for him saying we should do a podcast or whatever he did. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on, giving us your time and energy. We made it happen, Bliss. High five. I knew we could do it. Yeah. Once it was like, yeah, try 3, try 4. I was like, we're gonna get this. I will threaten Raphael if I have to. But anyway, it was my fault mostly because I fucked up the non-existent. Time doesn't exist. It's like, well, Valentine's Day sure does.
It was perfect. It was meant to be today, and I trust that implicitly.
I need to huff on those fumes. All right, guys, find the others further up and further in.
Thank you.
Thank you.